I'll pick up that voice issue today. The Prime Minister was very strong, almost strident about it at the end of the official ceremonies in Canberra when he hit the media. Let's have a listen.
If the referendum is not successful, I think people know that that will not be a moment that shows respect for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, that I think doesn't show the maturity of us as a nation, non-Indigenous Australia, of who we are, acknowledging the fullness and richness of our history, but also the way that we're perceived by the world.
Now, this is really wrong, Greg. It's blackmail. He's saying that we'll not be respectful, we'll not be mature, that we send a bad signal around the world. If the voice fails, it'll fail because he's forcing it down our throats. It goes too far. It divides us by race. It's a wrong idea, but he's trying to make it all about us if Australians decide, when he eventually puts this up later in the year, that we don't want this.
But I think the whole thrust of all of the advocates of the voice, including the Prime Minister, but even including those few Conservatives who support it, is to say that there is something morally wrong, degenerate, corrupt, wicked and ungenerous about anybody who chooses to vote no. Now, this country voted on recognition in the Constitution once before. In John Howard's preamble, we rejected it 70-30 from memory, and nobody took that as an insult to Aborigines. Our Constitution does not carry declarative statements of moral intent. We don't have statements like we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. We do things in a different way in Australia. Our tradition is sort of non-declarative, common sense, and the common law and equality through institutions and so on. Now, so I think recognition in the Constitution would be quite misplaced, but it would be much less bad than a racially determined voice, a racially determined institution with a racial franchise. I mean, how insane is this? Liberalism has struggled for 200 years to remove race from every element of civic identity and consciousness and status.
Absolutely.
And here we are injecting it back in. Utter madness. But what I think is very objectionable, I think even with the moral blackmail, the vote would be no if there was a fair debate. But there's an element of Cuba and North Korea about all this. You're not allowed to advocate for a no vote. It's not going to be financed, whereas in all previous referendums, a yes and a no case were financed. There's tax deductibility for the yes case. There's no tax deductibility for the no case. The government says it won't spend money, but it will rebut falsehoods. So anything that you and I have said tonight, the government would consider a falsehood. So they'll spend the taxes they collect out of our pocket to rebut our perfectly legitimate ideas. This was a proposal which was rejected in principle, quite rightly, by the Turnbull Cabinet, by Scott Morrison. It's rejected by John Howard, and yet somehow or other it's illegitimate, it's wicked, it's almost a crime. You could almost be locked up for voting no. This is a terrible wrong turn for Australian democracy.
Greg Sheridan, thank you.